Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Pokemon Legends Arceus, and I'm not supposed to be here yet.
Dude, it's so easy to get up there. I didn't even know that you were supposed to wait until you got, because you're supposed to get the climbing one,
No,
right?
you're supposed to get the Basculin to get here.
You know what was great when I was playing Scarlet and Violet is that I looked for the most out of the way place possible and just glided around the back of the caves to the Psychic Gym really early in the game. So I broke the gym order and just took on the Psychic Gym really early.
Were you able to win? Because that's like level 50 Pokemon, isn't it? If I
It took
remember
some
correctly.
doing. It took some doing, but I was able to win. Yes. It helps
Man.
that there were like trainer battles on the way up that I could use to get an edge on experience. But it did take some doing to actually beat the gym when I got there.
And the rest of the game must have been piss easy then, though.
Well, no, because I just whenever I happened to come upon a gym that was too low level for me, I just switched to lower level Pokemon and trained them.
So I did try to do that when I was playing my my playthrough of Scarlet Violet. Thank God you can access your box anywhere now. I forget. Credit where credit's due. I think Sword and Shield. No, Pokemon Let's Go was actually the first game to let you do that. So credit where credit's due to Let's Go. That was an awesome change because I was able to have a rotating team of something like 9 or 10 Pokemon, which I'd never had before, which was just a neat feeling. With that said, I don't know if they're ever gonna make like a hard Pokemon game, or if they even should. Because like I'd say this is probably the hard like Arceus is probably the hardest Pokemon game they've released since a long time.
Well, I mean, it depends on how it depends on like in what way you define that difficulty, because like I would argue that Scarlet and Violet as a general like overall game can be as hard as you want it to, and not just because you can switch over to lower level Pokemon whenever you want, although that is a thing that you can do if you want to train up a diverse team. The thing is, if you want it to be a hard game, you can go tackle the hard content earlier.
But you still have to do the easy content though, is the thing.
You still have to do it eventually, yeah.
I think so. I've been thinking about this a lot, and part of what I've come up with is that, there's things about level scaling and stuff that they can do, but I think the big thing about it that I think really needs to be done if they want the game to be challenging is to have trainers that have more than one Pokemon, or more than like 2 or 3, because this is something they've been doing since like Gen 6, where every trainer has like at max 3 Pokemon, and most of them have 1. And at that point, they feel like glorified wild Pokemon.
Yeah, it's kind of like that was the one consistently disappointing part of the game was the trainer battles sucking, and they don't need to suck anymore because they're completely opt in. You can.
I mean, I don't mind them being required. Honestly, I mean, granted, we're talking about a traditional Pokemon structure. Obviously, if you're doing an open world game,
I know, but
things need to be different.
I like the idea of them shifting to you having to opt into trainer battles because it always felt really video gamey, for want of a better word, that you could never say no to a trainer battle.
It was very video gaming.
And I like the idea that you can just talk to the trainers and opt into a battle. Because it's a contest, No one challenges you to a game of fucking Magic the Gathering and then says, no, you can't say no, you have to play me right now, right here.
I disagree with you, Lewis. I'm challenging you to a game of Magic the Gathering.
And
Turn 1, Black Lotus, Black Lotus, Black Lotus on missions. Your turn.
It makes sense for something like a Team Rocket battle to be compulsory, but not the regular ass hunters you find in the forest,
I don't know, man. But Bug Hunter Steve can kick me in the shins if I don't fight him. I better do what he says.
Well, I mean, there was that one samurai guy in the anime that was a little intense, but,
But yeah, it's just so I think that probably would have been a good way to go about it. I mean, they did, at the very least, try to, like, reward you for, like, trying to find all the trainers and whatnot, like, with the different goodies.
You fight a requisite number per region, and you can go talk to this guy at the Pokemon Center. It gives you a reward. That was a nice little system.
I mean, it's one of the only like real rewards for exploring you get. So I mean, there's that, but I guess the thing is that Pokemon's leaned towards a very your Pokemon heal every fight kind of mentality for a while. And for the record, that's fine. Because I know that me and many other people would go and run back to the Pokemon Center basically after every trainer battle.
Now you can just stock up on sandwiches and carry a Pokemon Center in your backpack.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and there's no disincentive to do that in the old games. The only thing that you spend doing that is time. And if you're 8 years old and it's the only game you own, then you've got all the time in the world.
Yeah, I absolutely did run back to the Pokemon Center after unless I was in a cave. That was the only time I forced myself to stick it out. If it was just a Pokemon trainer on a route or something, yeah, I ran back to the Pokemon Center.
It was especially a big thing in the gyms too, because the gyms are right in the town. It's right there.
The Pokemon Center's right next to you. You could just leave.
Yeah, so it's like, so again, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. As a matter of fact, the way Pokemon's structured, I think it's more interesting if they make the fights designed as such where it's more like it's more like a duel, and then when you're done, all your Pokemon heal up. That way, losing a Pokemon in a fight isn't such a big deal. And I know that all the Nuzlocke players are going to cry about that, but you made up your fake rules for the game to be hard, so deal with it.
One of my favorite things to do in Scarlet and Violet is to find the crystallized Pokemon that are just wandering around, because they're usually pretty high leveled.
Oh yeah, those were like some of the things that like actually could give you a beating.
And those were also the ones that came naturally with the most weird Terra type combinations. So you needed to go hunt them down if you wanted to find if you wanted to get a specific Pokemon with a specific type and didn't want to spend the time making it happen with items. You could go around and hunt for those things. I caught like a level fucking 30 or 50 fucking one of the evolutions that was like 20 levels above my party. I managed to pull that catch off, and it was glorious. You know, I love that kind of thing in my open world games, being able to tackle those sort of boss-like wandering monsters and get the better of them.
That's one of the cooler things about Xenoblade that I remember was when you're in the first big area and you see you're like level 15, and then you suddenly see the Brontosaurus type guys that are like a level 112, and you're like, oh shit.
The T-Rex at the start of Final Fantasy 12.
I know Final Fantasy 12 is a big one for that too, because of the way that game's like aggro system worked. Like, and that game was fairly open, if I remember.
Yeah, it's very much like Xenoblade, just without quite as expansive area design, because it was on.
I heard single player MMO thrown around a lot for 12.
MMO was
Xenoblade's also basically a single player MMO.
The single player MMO label was thrown around because they were comparing it to fucking Final Fantasy 11, but it's a lot more like Baldur's Gate in a way.
There goes that word again.
Both.
Okay, now the real question is, do the characters in Final Fantasy 12 never shut up like they do in Xenoblade?
I'm Captain Bosch!
I don't think they had much in the way of ambient voice acting at all, really.
Okay, because that is legitimately one of the things I can't stand.
I'm really
now it's my time. But now it's my time. But we mustn't get now. I'm really Shulk, help me. Oh my god, shut up.
I think he's got the point.
Did they dial that down at all in the definitive edition?
No, from what I can tell, 2 and 3 are just as bad.
Oh, wonderful.
From the memes I see, anyway. I haven't played Xenoblade 2 or 3. I honestly don't have much interest in either.
You see, Baldur's Gate figured this shit out years and years ago, way back in the 90s. They gave you an option to tell the game how often to have your characters say things. You know?
Yeah. So, I mean, Xenoblade 2 I'm not really interested in because I think the art style is terrible. And Xenoblade 3 is because I haven't beaten 1 or 2, and I kind of would want to do that. So it's like, nah, I'm good.
I hear you don't have to. Like, I got friends that love those games to death, and they said that you can absolutely just jump on 3 if you wanted to.
The only Xeno games that I would classify as you need to play them in order are the Xeno Saga ones, and that's because they're literally parts 1, 2, and 3 of an extended story that was meant to be 5 parts, but you know, Namco.
Well, I mean, where does it technically start? Because that's where my dumb ass would probably begin.
Well, I mean,
I think it was Xenogears, right?
Yeah, do you have
PlayStation?
Are they connected?
$400 for a copy of Xenogears?
I think they are.
If they're connected, it's through some fucking obscure lore connection that you're not going to figure out unless you look it up on a wiki anyway.
I know that Xenosaga is technically connected to Xenoblade because Who's Its Face is in it.
But I think Xenosaga is supposed to be the prequel. I don't know.
Hold on, how much is a copy of Xenosaga? No, not Xenosaga. Not Xenoblade. God, name your thing something different. Jesus Christ. Xenogears. I'm guessing $400 for a copy of Xenogears.
Do you still have a PS3?
Not one that works anymore.
Well,
but,
if you had one that works, the price would be $10.
It's still up?
Yeah.
I thought that they took down the PS3 shop like years ago.
No, they took down the PSP store.
Well, they took down the PSP store, but they were going to take down the PS3 shop, but people revolted, so they compromised and just shut off the ability to add funds through the PS3. So you kind of got to do that part through the website and then use your funds to buy things through the PS3.
Oh, that's how you had to do it on the 3DS. During the last days of that thing's
just they kept it up in that state so that they don't have to worry about security quite so much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that the security is probably a huge part of the server costs.
Server cost is one thing, but they also have to actively support the security and respond to changing circumstances. So that's
if there's ever a credit card leak or whatever, they have to be on that.
And they have to be ready to put out a firmware patch if something goes wrong. It's just a massive headache to keep that kind of effort going for something that old. That's why old MMORPGs tend to go into what's called maintenance mode, where some small company buys them and basically just keeps them alive as these little dinky niche products, because those small companies, they're fine with footing the cost of continuously supporting a game in that state. But
I'm sure it doesn't. So I think the thing about it is that I'm sure it doesn't take a lot of effort to do that in terms of coding. It just takes a team to be dedicated to it. So you're wasting manpower on it. So and you would supposedly want those devs doing something that would make you money, as opposed to just make you more money right now, as opposed to keeping the honestly fairly small stream of income you're getting from whatever the old MMO.
Yeah, and occasionally you'll do a small content update to keep the existing player base alive, but for the most part it would just be small time. Basically what Final Fantasy XI is in right now, except Square is keeping that themselves for some reason.
It still baffles me that Final Fantasy XI is A, still going, and B, has a dedicated player base, because that hasn't gotten an expansion in 15 years.
Yeah, it ended a long time ago.
Yeah, but if you can stand to read the entire story in those cramped ass text boxes, apparently Vana'diel and the storyline surrounding it are really good.
Well, that's kind of the thing. I'm hoping when I get to the game myself for the eventual video, I hope there's a UI mod, because that interface is ugly as shit.
Oh, hold on.
The UI you'll just have to deal with, but it is at least a slow enough paced game that the UI won't get in your way. And also, they did add stuff to the early game to make it a viable sort of single player experience early on. So
okay, so I'm looking up Final Fantasy XI on Wikipedia right now. The final expansion, Rhapsodies of God, I hate frickin' fantasy random apostrophes.
Vana'diel.
I hate it.
Vana'diel.
Yeah.
Vana'diel.
The final came out 2015, but there's also 2020 to 2013. The Voracious Resurgence is the follow-up to Rhapsodies of Vana'diel, requiring completion of Rhapsodies to be able to play through its content. The scenario has been released. First mainline story expansion after Rhapsodies of Vana'diel, which had been designed as a conclusion to the game. Wasn't the other one a conclusion to the game?
They made it so the game reaches level 99.
They're still making shit for this game.
They are. It's just like smaller content, you know.
But I mean, granted,
Every
yes,
2 weeks, every 2 weeks they have a login campaign to get people back into the game. I know this because I get the emails for them every time. But the real clunky ass part of dealing with Final Fantasy XI in 2023 is that they still use Play Online for the goddamn installer.
Just fucking threw up my mouth a little bit.
They still use Play Online for the installer, and there's this messenger service attached to it that no one fucking uses because it's Play Online. Why would you? Discord exists. But, like, you have to install the game through the Play Online thing, and it has a habit of not installing entirely the first time, and but you can only log in to install the game if you're actively subscribed, of course, because and then of course you have to go into Play Online to update the game, which happens fairly frequently. It's weird because it's like you're opening up a PlayStation 2 interface in this tiny ass window on your PC.
Is the game good enough to be playing it this long?
I think part of it is, part of it is its own base, but I know part of it is because of just how successful 14 is.
Well, it's not entirely.
Well, no, I'm more speaking about like as a player. Like, is it really worth keeping on playing?
Well, I'm talking more like why they still keep the servers.
It's a freaking impossible. It's a freaking borderline impossible game to get into organically because the entire early game is a barren wasteland. Sometimes other players will be a bro and give you like some startup money from their oodles and oodles of endgame money to try and help get you in the door because they know keeping the player base alive keeps the game alive. But like, it's a pretty slow paced game, and in a multiplayer context, when you're actually exploring dungeons and fighting bosses alongside a party of actual players, the pacing is pretty perfect for that sort of experience. Not so much for single player. Like, if you play a single player quest or instance in Final Fantasy XIV, you're firing off skills every 10 seconds at max. More often than that, every 3 or 4 seconds. You're constantly doing things. In Final Fantasy XI, you'll have skills that take literally 2 hours to cool down after you use them once.
What?
Yeah, you'll have a special ability that you need to wait 2 hours to use again after you've used it. That kind of thing. It's a very complicated, class-based system that was made before the World of Warcraft holy trinity of DPS, tank, and healer. So everything is way more complicated than you're used to, and it's paced out slowly enough that you can talk to your party members in between actions. But when you're playing the game alone, it's just a slog, you know? It doesn't work as a single-player game, but you'll have to play it as a single-player game for the first couple of expansions, probably.